3 spine-chilling military horror tales exposing sinister secrets of haunted battlefields. Lisa's heart raced as the whispers of the damned echoed in her mind, dragging her deeper into the suffocating gloom hovering over their small Midwestern town. This was no ordinary childhood. Jacob's laughter, once bright, now echoed hollow and distant. The streets of the crumbling suburb held secrets more sinister than she'd imagined, and they all conspired against her son. Autumn leaves swirled in grotesque dances, mauled by a chilling wind that seemed to murmur ancient curses. Something in the air reeked of abandoned souls, and she was trapped between her own demons and Jacob's haunting curiosity. Haunted battlefields weren't fantasy. They loomed at the end of the block, their shadows stretching like fingers ready to pull her son into darkness. The local military surplus store, draped in decay, held relics that pulsed with forgotten pain. She remembered the day Jacob noticed a battered combat helmet and leaned in close, whispering about the ghosts of fallen soldiers. Panic gripped her, wrenching her heart like a vice. Could this be the chasm that's pulling them apart? Could the very spirits Jacob adored in fearful fascination corrupt the last slivers of joy in their lives? As autumn thickened, nights filled with distant echoes pierced her sanity. Gunfire splitting the eerie silence. Ghostly cries carried on the wind, clawing at her resolve. No longer could she convince herself it was merely exhaustion from late shifts at the diner. The sinister undercurrents in their lives had manifested, creeping closer, entwining around her son until they formed shadows too rusted to escape. "Mom!" Jacob's laughter rang out, ridiculous and hollow in the stillness of their house. But his wide eyes dimmed, consuming stories from peers, the tales of brave souls caught in bloodied traps who never found peace. Each story seized her heart tighter, and she began praying for his innocence, for both their sakes, wishing these ghostly tales would fade like dust in the wind. She had buried sorrow deep within but now saw the cracks forming beneath layers of smiles and routines. One night, sleep evaded her. She wandered through echoes of her memories filled with Jacob's giggles and the smell of his favorite pancakes. But then it happened. The piercing silence morphed into chaos. Jacob vanished from their shared bedroom. Panic exploded inside her. "Jacob!" she screamed, voice cracking, helpless dread spilling over each syllable. The silence that followed was unbearable, echoing further into her broken spirit. With trembling hands, she raced to the police station, a sanctuary meant to shield, not shatter. Officers leaned back, indifferent to her pleas. Whispers swirled around her, gossip of an abandoned child intertwining with collective guilt from unseen horrors. Ghosts shared lunch at barbecues, their stories muffled in laughter. But Lisa felt the sinister dread behind each forced smile. They were haunted too, but no one dared speak of it. Each face she encountered etched with a version of her pain. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Lisa pressed on, piecing together fragments, suffocating in whispers of betrayal. Soldiers left behind, a battalion discarded by selfish commanders. Each discovery dug deeper, sending chills racing down her spine. And then she encountered him, the veteran lurking on the corner of her neighborhood. His weathered eyes held the weight of unsung sorrows. Instinct twisted in Lisa like a knife. He wasn't just part of their decay, he was the keeper of tragedies they all buried under suburban normalcy. The clock rushed forward, hearts pounding, shadows murmured dark secrets in her ear. She connected dots no one dared acknowledge. The horror had always lingered her life, intertwined with the lives of those tortured souls who deserved redemption. Time hurtled toward an inevitable confrontation, and as night fell, the disembodied voices stirred to life again, relentless in their pull. The spirits of betrayed soldiers whispered promises and threats as dawn approached, leaving one dreadful question lingering in the air. How far would she go to save Jacob from the sins of a town drenched in betrayal? The night stretched like a dark shroud over Lisa, the whispering winds curling through the trees, lacing her thoughts with dread. She stumbled home, each footstep heavy, burdened by an overwhelming sensation that time was slipping away. Jacob's laughter, once a beacon of innocence, echoed in her mind like a taunt. The autumn chill clawed at her skin, but the real cold formed in her chest, a mix of fear and a mother's instinct urging her to fight. As she reached her house, shadows danced along the walls, flickering in the dim light. Lisa hesitated, the door looming before her like an entrance to the abyss. The world outside was haunted, but the hell inside felt even worse. She pushed the door open, the hinges groaning in protest. The familiar smell of stale coffee and Jacob's toys scattered across the floor stung her eyes with memories. He was gone, vanished, and yet she felt his presence somewhere in the restless air. "Jacob," she called again, her voice breaking. She scanned every corner as if expecting him to pop up from behind the couch, grinning. But there was only silence, an unsettling stillness that gripped the house. Determined, she turned back to the streets, compelled toward the military surplus store, the very place that whispered secrets about ruined lives and despaired souls. Only hours earlier it had been quiet. Now, in the cool embrace of the night, the store's flickering neon failed to illuminate its depths. The door creaked open, revealing aisles cluttered with forgotten gear and the ghosts of veterans long gone. The very air seemed to vibrate with tension. She could almost hear their stories, each one steeped in fear, loss, and longing, as if the items themselves could recount the battles fought beyond their material shells. As Lisa navigated through the dimness, her fingers grazed over a rusted bayonet, its edge still sharp, yet dull enough to blend seamlessly into despair. It sent shivers through her, a reminder of bloodied hands and unfathomable acts that lingered in the collective memory of the town. Was she merely visiting the past, or was it calling her with a sinister intent? Looking for something? A voice rasped behind her. She spun around, heart racing. The haunted veteran she had seen earlier emerged from the darkness, a figure cloaked in shadows that seemed to cling to him like a second skin. His eyes glinted like broken glass, reflecting horrors concealed beneath a surface of apparent calm. "They don't let go easy," he whispered, his voice crackling like fire on dry wood. "Not the soldiers, not the memories. Where's my son?" she gasped, the words catching in her throat like barbed wire. He leaned closer, breath alive with stories that threatened to unravel her sanity. "He is drawn to them. The soldiers want him, want his spirit, his laughter." A dark chuckle escaped his lips, sending a chill slithering down her spine. "They need him for what's to come." Fear ignited in her chest. Had Jacob's innocent curiosity summoned these dark forces? "Can you help me?" she pleaded, desperation spilling from her lips. "Please, I have to save him." The veteran straightened, a weight settling in his shoulders. "You'll find what you seek," he said, gesturing toward the back of the store. "But remember, not everything that calls to you wants to return." Each word echoed in her mind as she reluctantly moved deeper into the shadows, drawn forward by a force she couldn't comprehend. Lisa felt a pull, a dark allure laced with unspeakable truths. As she stepped into the dimly lit backroom, the chilling air erupted with distant laughter, Jacob's laughter, twisted and tainted. Something stirred in the depths, pooling from hidden corners, growing darker, hungrier. "Mom!" The cry shattered the silence, echoing through her as hope mingled with panic. But then, the lights flickered violently, plunging her into eternal darkness. One pulse-pounding thought flared brightly through the veil of terror. Was she stepping deeper into the shadows? Or was the darkness finally consuming Jacob? The answers lay just ahead, wrapped in a sinister embrace. Tomorrow she would confront her fears. But tonight, the whispers held her captive, every breath bringing her closer to the answers and the unspeakable terror that awaited her. Would she dare to follow, or risk losing Jacob forever? The darkness pressed in around Lisa, a thick blanket that smothered her senses. Her heart thundered in her chest, a frantic drum echoing in the silence as the laughter faded into a haunting echo. One moment, she was filled with determination. The next, Fear clawed at her insides. The air turned cold as she stood in the black void of the backroom, a dizzying sense of foreboding washing over her. "Jacob!" she whispered, her voice trembling. The shadows shifted, revealing a pale glimmer crawling up the walls. Frantically, she turned, desperate for a glimpse of light, but there was none. Just the oppressive weight of darkness wrapping around her, the sensation of unseen eyes watching her every move. A low growl rumbled from the corners of the room, and the smell of decay mixed with the dampness in the air. Something was here, something that wanted her. She whipped around, feeling as though the walls themselves were closing in. "Move!" she screamed, adrenaline pushing her body into motion. She stumbled forward, reaching for the door, but it felt miles away. All she could hear was the echo of Jacob's voice, drumming in her eardrums like a storm. "Mom, I'm scared." The child's plea reverberated, sharper now, like a blade cutting through the fog. Her instinct sparked, and she clawed at the door, each pull revealing an unsettling reality. The handle felt hot, almost alive. Without thinking, she yanked it open, light slicing through the darkness. The back room bled into the main aisle of the store, but the world before her had shifted. Dust motes swirled in the sudden illumination, and the aisles stretched like tombstones, indifferent to her plight. "Help!" Her voice rang out, but the silence that answered crushed her. She moved down the aisles, each footstep heavy, the echoes of her cries swallowed whole by the oppressive, stale air. Was she alone? Was Jacob in here with her? She could feel him all around her, tugging at the edges of her mind, pulling her deeper into this nightmare. "Over here." A sudden, sharp whisper broke through the stillness, and she turned sharply. A shadow darted down one of the aisles, and she raced after it, her heart pounding, blood thrumming in her ears. "Jacob!" she shouted, desperation lacing every word. The shadow danced just out of reach, teasing her as it flitted into the flickering light. It was as if the very store itself was playing a cruel game, leading her on a wild goose chase. Left to right, down this aisle, then that, she felt the walls shifting, bending beneath some unseen pressure. Then it stopped. At the end of the aisle, she saw him, a small figure, just beyond her view. His outline was shrouded, shadowed by the flickering bulbs overhead. "Jacob!" She lunged forward, her chest tightening with fear mixed with hope. But as she got close, the figure melted away, fading like mist. "No! Come back!" She fell to her knees, panic swallowing her breath. The light flickered and dimmed, the store around her thrumming with an energy that crackled like static. The walls began to close in, whispering secrets in voices that weren't her own. The towering shelves loomed like dark sentinels, and as terror thickened in the air, the implication of the veteranous words ghosted back to her. "Not everything that calls to you wants to return, Mom." The voice tore through the air again, sharper than before, piercing her heart like a dagger. There was a great noise, then a cracking, like thunder, and the shelves trembled. Something was coming for her, and it was hungry. In that moment, Lisa understood. Jacob was not just lost. He had become part of something far darker. What was this force that had taken hold of her son? With rage and despair fueling her, she rose to her feet. She would not let them take Jacob from her, her child, her heart. She had to find him. But as she stepped forward, a freezing grip clutched at her ankle. Shadows lurked all around, creeping closer. "Help!" She cried out into the void, but the shadows answered with silence. From the darkness, a deep voice rumbled. "You shouldn't be here, you can't save him." Lisa's resolve trembled, but within her glimmered the last spark of hope. She was fighting against time and the past, both threatening to drag her under. With a steely determination, she turned her gaze to the heart of the darkness, where that twisted laughter echoed still. She would confront whatever awaited her. But at what cost? And was this darkness truly just a monster, or something far more insidious waiting to be awakened? The shadows pulsed, thick and suffocating, as Lisa steeled herself to move deeper into the store. Behind her, the darkness churned, coiling like a serpent, its whispers pulling at her sanity. Could she really confront whatever dwelled in this nightmare? "Mom!" The voice, now desperate and more distinct, echoed through the aisles, trembling with fear. Each syllable crashed against her, a painful reminder of what she was fighting for. "Hold on, Jacob. I'm coming," she shouted into the abyss, her voice wavering but resolute. The flickering lights above cast eerie silhouettes that danced around her. Just as quickly as they appeared, they vanished into the inky black, leaving her with only the faint trace of their existence. She pushed forward, footsteps heavy with dread. As she moved, the air grew more electric, charged with a pulse that reverberated through her veins. She passed shelves stacked with abandoned products, dust-coated toys and bottles that ominously leaned as if whispering her fate to one another. Some items seemed fresh and untouched, while others looked like they had been here longer than memory itself frozen in time. What had happened to this place? "Mom!" Jacob's call crackled through the silence again, now sounding eerily close, just around the corner. But as she turned the corner, a shiver snaked down her spine. There he was, just a few feet away, half illuminated by a sputtering light. The boy stood rigid, his gaze fixated somewhere behind her. Her heart soared momentarily, but as his small frame trembled, a dread settled deep in her gut. Why wasn't he moving? Was he trapped by something unseen? "Jacob," she urged, reaching out. But instead of running toward her, he only whispered, "Don't look back, please." Those words pierced her like ice-cold daggers. Fear twisted in her chest, and she felt a deep compulsion to obey, but the instinct to protect him overpowered everything else. In one swift movement, she turned, adrenaline surging as she spun to face the darkness at her back. What she saw made her blood run cold. Figures coalesced from the void, tormented souls with hollow eyes, their mouths twisted in silent screams. They hovered just beyond the reach of light, distorted faces flashing memories of anguish that clawed at her mind. "Join us," they called, their voices a dissonant melody. "He belongs to us, no." Lisa screamed, the sound echoing through the vast emptiness. Heart racing, she stepped closer to Jacob, desperation fueling her. "You can't have him." As if in response, the figures swirled closer, faces shifting and morphing with every heartbeat, their malevolent energy thickening the air. They reached for Jacob, fingers like rotting roots. She dashed in front of him, her body bracing to shield his small frame from the advancing horror. A growl erupted from the darkness, one not from the specters, but something much more primal. A creature shifted, massive and serpentine, with hollow eyes bored into her. It slithered forward, hungry, practically dripping from its jaws that hung open, revealing rows of jagged teeth each sharper than daggers. "Leave him alone," Lisa shouted, fists balled and resolve unwavering. The darkness hissed, recoiling as if her voice had severed some ancient spell binding it. But as the beast halted, its gaze fixated on her, the other entities recoiled as well, their horrid whispers morphing into something clearer, a cacophony of broken promises. "Run, Lisa, before it takes you too." Suddenly, a deafening crash erupted from somewhere beyond a shelf that threatened to buckle under unseen pressure. In that chaotic moment, Lisa felt time splinter. Behind her, Jacob's tiny hand gripped her shirt, knitting them together in their desperate fight for survival. "Mom, let us go," he pleaded, fear evident in his voice. Lisa faced the monster, her pulse quickening. Could consume them both, or she could attempt a path through the horror. If she didn't flee now, they would become part of this grotesque tapestry. "Stay close," she barked, pulling Jacob to her side as she bolted into the aisle, the jarring clang of crashing shelves roaring behind them. Chaos erupted, and Lisa's heart raced. But as she rushed forward, a strong pull yanked at her, an invisible force trying to drag them back into the maw of darkness. Would they escape? Or were they destined to become the next lost souls trapped in the store's terrible secrets? The answer loomed just ahead, hidden in the shadows. And in this game of survival, only one truth remained clear. Desperation breeds both courage and madness. Panic surged through Lisa as she sprinted with Jacob clinging to her side. The The scream of overturned shelves followed, a haunting chorus of splintering wood and shattered glass. Every step felt like she was moving through syrup, the force of the darkness behind them a heavy breath on her neck. It was hunting them, tasting their fear. "Mom, look," Jacob gasped, pointing forward with wide eyes. Lisa followed his trembling finger, and her breath hitched. A dim light flickered ahead, pulsing like a heartbeat, beckoning her. It was a way out, or maybe just deeper into the nightmare. "Don't stop," she shouted, pulling him forward, desperation driving her. Together, they plunged into a narrow aisle, the air thickening with a palpable dread. The whispers grew louder, swirling around them like a tornado of disembodied voices, each one tugging at her mind with promises of rest and release. "Join us," they echoed, weaving painful memories into the words, a cacophony that sliced through her resolve. She clutched Jacob tighter, his small form trembling beside her. But she couldn't let go, not now, not ever. They raced past rows of cabinets, where flickering shadows seemed to bend and stretch like fingers reaching out. Lisa's heart hammered, the rhythm echoing in her ears, drowning out the whispers urging her to give in. "Mom!" Jacob's voice quivered, a thin thread of panic. "What if they grab us?" "I won't let them," she promised, though her heart quaked with doubt. Suddenly, the lights around them flickered violently, plunging everything into darkness for a fraction of a second. When it returned, Lisa saw them figures standing in their path, silent and foreboding, formed from the very shadows that pursued them. One stepped forward, its face a perfect mask of sorrow, eyes hollow but seeming to glimmer with a sinister understanding. "You'll never escape it," murmured, voice a soft caress that felt like ice. "Run!" Lisa shouted, bursting forward, breaking through their ranks with Jacob at her heels. She couldn't breathe, the air thickening until it felt like lungs meant to scream were now foolishly quiet. A barrier of cold cloaked her body, wrapping her in a nightmare. Yet she pressed ahead, dodging between shelves, the low murmur of the lost souls fading, but always lingering. They reached the end of the aisle, hearts racing, breathless and desperate. A sudden change in the atmosphere chilled her skin. A dark, pulsating force spun in the air, tendrils of something vast and ethereal wrapping around her ankles. Panic clutched at her throat. She could barely move. "No, don't. We have to keep going, Jacob." She turned, urging him to move. But as she glanced over her shoulder, her world fell to pieces. The creature loomed larger than before, coiling like smoke, eyes gleaming with malevolence. It lunged, a blur of darkness as it darted toward them, and she felt its breath, icy and foul. Time slowed. She pulled Jacob closer, shielding him with her body. She could almost taste the bitterness of despair, a last meal before the end. But then she saw it, shimmering just beyond the creature. A small door stood ajar, light spilling from its edges, a promise of safety. "Jacob, there!" Lisa yelled, forcing her legs to take the first step. "What about the monsters?" He whimpered, frozen in fear. "Trust me," she shouted, her voice fierce. "Run." They sprinted toward the light as shadows clawed around them. But just as they reached the threshold, the darkness shot forward, a final desperate grasp to claim them. The beast was upon them, a tangle of terror hungry for souls. Then, with a powerful force, Lisa shoved Jacob through the door, the frantic beats of her heart sinking with the chaos around them. But just as she turned to follow, a piercing shriek erupted from the figure as it captured her ankle, darkness folding like a net. "Mom!" Jacob cried from within the blinding light, his terrified voice slicing through her resolve. "Keep going," she yelled, fighting against the weight wrapping around her. But the horror was relentless, dragging her back into the void. Clawing for freedom, she reached out towards her child, whose face showed pure terror, a reflection of her own. Then, with one last scream of defiance, Lisa twisted her body, forcing herself forward, determined to pull Jacob with her. But the light flickered. A final tug pulled her back, and in a rush of overwhelming grief and strength, she erupted through the door. But the world on the other side wasn't what she expected. There stood Jacob, alone, eyes wide and filled with dread, staring at something just out of her view. "Mom," he whispered, voice quaking. It still here the door slammed shut behind her, a chilling finality that echoed in the silence. The shadows danced just beyond the doorframe, whirling with malicious intent. What had followed them into the light? And were they truly free or just beginning another chapter of their nightmare? The pulse of dread intensified, and with each breath, Lisa felt the suffocating grip of darkness tightening once more. Lisa turned slowly, dread pooling in her stomach. Why had they stepped into this place? The walls were grimy, closed in, the faint light around them flickering erratically as if the room itself were trembling in fear. "Stay close, Jacob," she murmured, but her voice faltered. Her son was staring past her, eyes glued to nothingness, his small body trembling slightly. "What is it?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. It's there," he said, shaking his head as if he could knock away the dreadful vision that clung to him. She turned around, heart racing. The air shifted subtly, thickening with something rotten and ancient that clung to her skin like dew. Their surroundings morphed into a shadowy void, edges blurring like a deepening nightmare. Then she felt it, a cold breath against the back of her neck. "Mom!" Jacob's scream was pure terror. She spun back, but the space was empty. Just them and the pulsating shadows stretching toward them like claws. "Jacob, we have to move." She grabbed his hand tighter, pulling him to the nearest corner, where a tiny window sat high up near the ceiling. It offered a glimmer of hope, just a sliver of light, but it might also lead to heartbreak if they couldn't reach it. "I can't," Jacob gasped, eyes wide. "What if it catches us?" "We'll find a way," she promised, forcing courage into her voice. But her heart raced with doubt. The darkness lurked, every element resonating with malice. She could feel it watching, waiting to pounce. Suddenly, with a terrible crack, the floor beneath them splintered, opening a chasm that yawned wide like the mouth of some ancient beast. Jacob stumbled, and Lisa barely caught him, pulling him back from the edge just as the screaming shadows surged forward. "Run!" she yelled, dragging him through the dim room toward the far wall, away from the growing pit of darkness. But another wave of ghastly whispers swelled, filling the room with an icy haze stinging her throat. "Join us!" The voices called, hauntingly melodic and utterly devoid of compassion. They rippled through Lisa's mind, threatening to invade and weasel their way into her being. Each word felt like a razor cutting through, painful and familiar. "Come on," she urged, clawing through the dark with sheer determination. The bottomless pit loomed behind them, its cold grip stretching out. Just ahead, the faint glimmer of a door appeared. Hope flickered, but as they ran, shadows whipped around them, angry manifestations swollen with rage. Lisa felt the air shift again, heavier than before. The beast clung to her heels, a silent predator enthralled with the hunt. "Mom, it's coming!" Jacob cried, frantically trying to keep pace. Desperation thickened the air, curling into her lungs, suffocating, torturing. "No, not now," she shouted, the door seeming farther away with each step. Just as they reached it, a shadow lunged, crashing against her back, sending her sprawling to the ground. Pain shot through her as she turned to shield Jacob. "Get the door!" she screamed, heart pounding like a war drum, adrenaline surging. Jacob hesitated, eyes wide with fear, but then he dashed toward it, fingers fumbling for the knob. Before Lisa could even get up, dark tendrils coiled around her wrist, dragging her backward away from him. She felt a scream clawing its way up her throat. "Jacob!" she yelled, fighting with every ounce of her strength. The door swung open, and Jacob stood frozen, a silhouette against the light spilling into the room. "Mom!" But just then, something in the shadows slithered closer, wrapping its icy fingers around her throat, choking the words away. Lisa felt weightlessness as she was drawn back, dark visions swirling around her. She was losing him. "Mom!" Jacob shouted. Heart racing, Lisa summoned the last of her energy. "Run, Jacob, please." The door slammed shut again, the light vanishing as darkness surged around her. A monstrous wave swallowing all hope. For one heartbeat, a chilling moment, Lisa believed the darkness had won. But as the shadows roared and clawed, she thought she saw a flicker of light beyond the void. Could it be coming from the door? Jacob! She screamed, straining against the suffocating darkness, desperate for any escape. And then, in the thick of despair, came a shocking revelation: how many had gone before her? How many souls trapped within these haunted walls? The air crackled ominously, and as dread settled back in, another question loomed. How many more would join them forever? And amid the thickening shadows, a chilling laugh echoed, hinting at a deeper truth lurking close behind them. Lisa's world twisted wildly, darkness closing in like a swift tide. She tugged at her wrist, fumbling against the cold, clammy grip that pulled her deeper into the malevolent shroud. Panic surged, her heart a drum pounding against the weight of impending doom. "Jacob!" she cried, her voice a breathless plea swallowed by the shadows. But the only answer was silence, thick and stifling, echoing her worst fears. She could still see the glint of the door, life, freedom just beyond the chaos. The cold shadows tightened around her throat, squeezing, each pulse a gentle reminder of her fleeting grasp on reality. Lisa choked back terror. Desperation ignited her will. She wasn't ready to fall into this abyss. Not yet. With an explosive surge of will, she jerked her body sideways, the tendrils loosening just enough for her to scramble away. She dove toward the flickering light, grasping for the last shred of hope that may yet slip from her fingers. The shadows hissed, their whispers sharpening into agonized screams, reverberating through the air. Join us forever." Their voices wrapped around her like barbed wire, biting into her sanity, but fear pushed her onward. "Mom!" Jacob's voice cut through, tiny, terrified. That sound anchored her, a lifeline in an ocean of despair. Gathering every ounce of her frantic energy, she lunged toward where the door once stood. The door now seemed a distant memory. She pushed through the shadows, feeling their icy fingers clawing at her back, tugging at her strength. Each step was a battle. A slight misstep could toss her into the dark abyss awaiting her. With each breath, a cutting chill sank into her bones. Then she heard it, a soft whimper, barely perceptible, creeping through the oppressive silence. Guilt and fear coiled in her chest. "Jacob!" Her voice cracked, a raw plea, desperation clawing its way out. "Mom!" He was close, too close to lose. But where? The darkness played tricks, shifting details like quicksand. Shadows twisted, taking on ghastly shapes that mocked her. Lisa bit back a scream as she spotted a figure, a shapeless silhouette that loomed ahead. With each step, her heart raced, echoing the frantic thumping in her ears. "No!" She darted left, avoiding what felt like encroaching death. She spotted him, a flicker of Jacob's shirt caught in the dim light. He stood by the wall, eyes wide and glossed over with despair. "Mom, it won't let me go. Hold on, I'm coming," she urged, fear gripping her throat. The shadows around her pulsed like a living creature, swirling aggressively, scorching her flesh as if they could smell her fear. Treading carefully, she knew she had to dodge them. But the overwhelming sensation of being hunted loomed, a predatory chill creeping closer. Fighting panic, she felt her foot catch on something, a cold, twisted root of darkness curled around her ankle, pulling her down. Lisa stumbled, battling for balance. The breath knocked from her lungs as her hands grasped the stone floor. "Get back!" Jacob screamed, growing frantic at her failure. "Jacob, hold on!" she shouted, and in a moment of clarity, a piece of the fog lifted. In this moment, she realized, this darkness was feeding on her fear, her despair. With renewed determination, she yanked her leg free, rising to her feet just as a shadow lunged. She pivoted, striking out with her fists, filled with instinctive fury. The darkness hissed, but she pushed forward, locking eyes with her son. "Jacob, now!" Without hesitation, they rushed toward one another, pulse racing, hearts sinking in a chaotic adrenaline dance. They reached the rickety door that seemed to grow more vibrant with every step. Jacob's fingers found the knob. Would it be the exit, or an even darker fate? But just as they were about to grasp the handle, the laughing voice roared from the depths. You think you can escape? You belong to me now. The walls trembled, shrieks bouncing off every corner. Lisa's heart fell. Had they just awakened a monster far worse than they had imagined? As Jacob gripped the handle, the shadows writhed violently, angry and insatiable. With one last whisper, Lisa realized the price of survival might be greater than she ever feared. She turned to Jacob, eyes wide with dread and urgent resolve. Whatever happens, don't look back. And as they bolted for freedom, a chilling sensation enveloped her. What if the darkness had already woven its tendrils around their souls? The door burst open ahead, light spilling like a beacon, but the shadows screamed at her heels. Would this be salvation or the beginning of something much worse? They erupted through the door, tumbling into a world flooded with harsh, blinding light. Lisa's heart raced, pounding far louder than it had in the suffocating darkness. But the relief was short-lived. What lay before them sent shivers down her spine. They found themselves in a vast, desolate landscape, a barren battlefield littered with remnants of war-twisted metal, abandoned uniforms, and rusted weapons long forgotten. The ground was a muddy brown-gray, and the sky overhead churned with dark clouds, swirling ominously, as if nature itself was holding its breath. "Mom, where are we?" Jacob's small voice trembled, cracking like the brittle air around them. "I don't know." Her words escaped her, faltering. Shadows loomed at the fringes, dark figures shifting restlessly, drifting through the ruins. They seemed familiar yet warped, resembling soldiers, but their faces were contorted, pain mingling with rage. The echoes of battle floated in the air, faint cries mingling with the whispers of the long dead. Lisa grasped Jacob's hand, instinctively pulling him closer, searching for a way out. Panic seized her chest again. She could almost feel the malevolent darkness closing in behind them. "We have to move," she urged, adrenaline pumping. But as they stepped deeper into this haunted battlefield, time felt distorted. The sun flickered beneath the angry clouds, shadows flickering like flames. Brazen flashes of vivid memories assaulted her senses: the clash of metal, the cries of wounded men, the acrid smell of smoke. Lisa stumbled forward, her mind a cacophony of terror, wrestling with the images that swirled around her. "We need to find shelter," she shouted, desperately scanning the landscape for a safe haven. But each building lay in ruin, grotesque figures of memory haunting the wreckage. "They don't belong here. This isn't real." Jacob's fingers trembled in her grip. "Mom, I see them, I see them." He pointed ahead, eyes wide with terror. Lisa looked, and her heart dropped. Emerging from the shadows were ghostly soldiers, their faces twisted in anguish, their cries an unbearable discord. They weren't just apparitions. They were trapped souls, caught in a loop of suffering. "Get back." Lisa pulled Jacob, yanking him away from the path of the looming figures. "They can't hurt us. They're just memories." But as she turned to find a way, the ground shivered beneath them, a throaty rumble that sent chills racing down her spine. The sky split open with a crack of thunder. The spectral soldiers seemed to grow larger, their wails blending into a ghastly chorus that pierced her very essence. Join us, forever." Their anguished faces blurred into shapes fingers reaching, pulling them in. Lisa fought the deluge of fear threatening to drown her mind, her only focus on Jacob. This way, she dashed toward a crumbling structure on the outskirts of the battlefield. A decrepit building, its walls thick with shadows, beckoned to them with a sinister charm. As they entered the ruins, Lisa slammed the door behind them, breath heavy. Darkness enveloped them again, but this time, it felt different, close, suffocating. A faint glow pulsed from the center, illuminating a grotesque tableau of the past, the spirits coiling around one another, lost in their eternal struggle. "Look, Mom, it's all so sad." Jacob's voice quivered, eyes wide as he locked onto the tormented figures. "No," Lisa bit out, shaking her head, panic radiating through her being. If they stayed here, they'd be pulled down into the abyss with them. We have to find a way out. But the whispers grew louder, the figures clawing at the edges of her mind. Shadows wrapped around her feet like quicksand, sucking her into despair. And then, from deep within that overwhelming darkness, a hand shot out. It wasn't Jacobus. Lisa gasped, dread freezing her in place as the specter of a soldier lunged for her. You cannot escape. You belong here with us. Terror surged through her, rooting her to the spot. The sacrifice of many weighed heavily on the air, imbuing the moment with an inescapable doom. The darkness was everywhere, feeding on their fear, and she understood too late. To break free would require more than strength. As the shadows closed in tightly, she felt a cold chill race up her spine. Would they become part of this nightmare? Would they, too, be lost to the haunting echoes of the battlefield? Jacob, hold on to me. Whatever happens, don't let go. But even as she said it, she felt the weight of the shadows pressing in, threatening to swallow them whole. And just when she thought all hope was lost, a faint light flickered in the distance, a new exit, beckoning them forward. Could it be real? Would they dare take that chance? The faint glow pulsed like a heartbeat, casting eerie shadows on the decaying walls of the ruin. Lisa's instincts screamed at her to flee, but that light seemed to promise salvation. Mom, what if it's a trap? Jacob's voice trembled, filled with both fear and curiosity. I don't know, sweetie, but we can't stay here. They're coming for us. Shadows writhed and twisted around them, clawing at her sanity. Each whisper grew more insistent, an endless chant that made her skin crawl. Her heart pounded loudly in her ears as she tightened her grip on Jacob. We go. Now. She dragged him toward the flickering light, willing it to be a gateway back to safety. As they approached, the walls vibrated with an unnatural energy, and the lights surged brighter, revealing the grotesque forms of the deceased soldiers trapped outside. Their faces morphed into fits of rage and sorrow, an unbearable panorama of anguish. Join us, they howled in unison, their voices rising like a ghastly choir, echoing within the crumbling walls. Shut up, Lisa shouted, her voice raw with despair. You can't keep us here. She felt Jacob's small body trembling beside her, fear radiating from him. It's too loud, Mom. He whimpered, covering his ears as if blocking out the torment. The pulse of the light flickered again, stuttering, as if it too felt the weight of despair. Lisa pushed on, guiding Jacob closer to the source, when suddenly the ground beneath them lurched. The walls groaned, and dust rained down like forgotten memories. No, she cried out. The whispers grew frantic, clawing at her mind with every step. The specters surged, their fingers reaching desperately, gasping for release but only drawing them deeper into the darkness. The flickering light pulsed once more, illuminating a tattered banner hanging from the ceiling. Words were barely legible. Seek redemption. It seemed to mock them, a taunting tease that held promises above their heads. Mom, what does it mean? Jacob asked, his voice small against the torrent of wails. The answer escaped her. She didn't know. All she could focus on was the torment around them. We have to reach it, Jacob. Just a little further. They dashed forward, but shadows coiled around Lisa's ankles, a constricting vice tightening their grip. Help us. A soldier's ghost lunged toward her, eyes hollowed with despair. Help us find peace. The words struck like knives. Lisa hesitated, guilt clawing at her. Could they help these souls? But the shadows twisted tighter, pulling her back into oblivion. No, she screamed, thrashing as she struggled against the weight, her vision blurring in the intensity of the chaos. We can't stay. Somehow, through the roiling haze of horrors, she saw it. The light widened, beckoning. One last push and they could escape this hell. Summoning all her strength, she dashed forward, Jacob right beside her. As they broke through the threshold, the screams rose to a deafening peak, drowning out everything else. They stumbled into a large chamber, vibrant beams of light spilling like waterfall torrents around them. But ahead loomed an enormous mural sprawling across the wall, a twisted depiction of the battlefield. Shadowy figures entwined in eternal conflict. Lisa's heart sank as she took in the finished mural, a haunting tableau of souls trapped forever. It's a warning. Her voice trailed off. "I don't want to be here anymore," Jacob cried, the panic building again. Just then, the ground beneath them quaked, fissures opening up, threatening to swallow the room they stood in. Pieces of the mural began to warp and shift, dragging with it the essence of the very soldiers who fought, locking eyes with Lisa, pleading, "Mom, what do we do?" In that moment, understanding dawned on Lisa like a fading hope. If they wanted to escape, they'd have to confront the tragic fate of those souls. Acknowledge their pain, Jacob, Lisa whispered, a chilling realization dawning. We must listen to them, but even as she said the words, dread suddenly pummeled her. What would it mean to listen? Their breath caught in their throats as the room dimmed, and so many eyes pinned them down, the haunting soldier-esque gazes reflecting the depths of despair. In that instant, a thunderous voice echoed through the chamber. To break free, you must bear witness or risk being their next cries. What had she just unleashed? The ground trembled again, a furious quake that almost knocked Lisa off her feet. Shadows twisted around her, swirling like a storm ready to consume everything in its path. The weight of countless souls pressed in on her, an unbearable suffering that seeped into her bones. "Mom!" Jacob clung to her, terror clawing at his voice. "What do we do?" Lisa felt something shift inside her, a spark of maternal resolve igniting against the rising tide of despair. "We face it. We listen." Her voice burst out, fueled by a fierce desperation. She squeezed Jacob's hand tighter, making him meet her eyes. "I won't let them take us. We need to understand." As if willed by her intention, the energy in the chamber thickened. The mural began to breathe, each figure morphing, twisting into vibrant flashes of their past. No longer just shadows laboring under grief, they transformed into soldiers fierce, young, full of life. The air filled with gunfire, rolling thunder, and the cries of men in battle. "Look," Lisa urged, pointing at the vivid scenes. "They've been lost for so long they need to be seen." A wave of hope threaded through the fear, an understanding of the power wrapped in acknowledgement. These tormented souls weren't the monsters, they were victims, trapped by the horrors they left behind. And as they watched, the figures turned toward them, eyes filled with anguish and longing. "Witness us," they pleaded in a collective sigh, voices merging into a haunting melody. Tears stung Lisa's eyes. How heavy their pain must be. But in that sorrow lay the first glimmers of truth. Something solid took shape in her heart. The realization dawned acknowledgement could bring liberation, not just for them but for herself and Jacob too. "We see you," Lisa whispered, her voice a whisper against the storm, her heart racing. "We see your suffering." Jacob nodded, his small face mirroring her bravery, eyes locked onto the soldiers, who bore such weight on their weary shoulders. The figures froze, surprise washing over them like a wave, their specters flickering. "You witness," one spoke, a young soldier, face bright yet shadowed. "Then you too risk it. Bear the burden with us." With that, the shadows writhed and the room shook even more violently. Memories flooded the chamber, battle cries, laughter, lives lived and lost. Lisa felt each fragment penetrating her heart, seeping through memories of love and loss, weaving a tapestry of shared humanity. "Mom, it's overwhelming," Jacob shouted, trying to pull away, but she held fast, body trembling yet resolute. "Fight it. Don't let it take you." Lisa steadied him, pushing her own fear aside. Daring to step closer, she lifted her voice above the raging whispers. "We remember. We promise you will not be forgotten." With her words, the dynamic changed. The soldiers, once despairing, began to draw closer, forming a circle around Lisa and Jacob. The shadows of battle receded, revealing faces now softened by hope, a fragile truce blossoming between the living and those lost to time. "Witness," the soldiers echoed, resounding through the stillness that followed. Their voices blended into a beautiful song of their own, a swell that filled the chamber with warmth, chasing away the freezing grip of darkness. Within that moment, something miraculous unfolded. Light crackled and buzzed, shimmering around them, banishing the shadows that had tormented them for so long. The room shimmered, walls glowing brilliantly, until with one final pulse, the battlefield mural began dissolving into grains of shimmering dust, the souls breaking their binds. Go! Claim your freedom! The soldier's voice soared, a final command that echoed with love and respect. Suddenly, there came a great rush of wind, and an immense wave of energy billowed out, grasping at each soldier with tender hands, whisking them away into golden light. Lisa watched as their forms shimmered and shifted, passing through the very fabric of the shadows. "Come back!" Jacob cried, reaching into the light, his small hand stretching toward the fading faces. But still, Lisa kept him close, knowing what had to be done. The dust settled over them, a glittering reminder of what had been, and the air filled with a palpable calm. A great silence enveloped the room, triumph mingling with grief. And in this stillness, Lisa felt something profound. Even as the echoes of the battlefield faded, she learned the price of freedom. It was remembrance. "Mom," Jacob whispered, his innocent gaze searching her face. "Are they gone?" "They're free now," she replied, a lump forming in her throat. "We honored them. They won't be forgotten. And we can go too?" he asked, uncertainty lingering in every word. "Yes," she assured him, energy rushing through her veins. With her child by her side, they moved toward the path that illuminated ahead, a doorway framed in the light resonating with warmth. With each step, the shadows lifted and the weight that had long held them was lifted. As they crossed the threshold, the light engulfed them, a cocoon of safety welcoming their arrival. They emerged back into the military surplus store, the past behind them, and a new dawn shimmered before them. The silence now felt alive, rich with memories but absent the haunting. "Mom, we did it," Jacob breathed, wonder plastered across his small face. "We did." Lisa smiled through tears, feeling the warmth of victory filling her heart. But one truth lingered: the past would never be forgotten. She would carry it with her always, not just as a burden, but as a reminder of resilience, love, and the power of remembrance. Together, they stepped into the future, hand in hand. And as they walked away from the shadows of the past, a profound sense of peace settled, echoing through the vastness of their shared journey. It was over for now, but their bond, tested and strengthened, held the promise of new beginnings, not just for them, but for every soul yearning to be remembered. And as the sun rose on that quiet Midwestern town, hope glimmered through the pain, guiding them toward the light waiting just beyond the next story yet to unfold. If you made it this far, it's time to show your support. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to help the algorithm keep bringing you these incredible tales. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending, because we want to hear from you. And finally, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now, and let us keep this community thriving. Don't wait even one more second.